Welcome to Marketing Step by Step, Session 10, Positioning, Owning Your Mental Niche. I want to particularly thank Al Ries and Jack Trout, the authors of the book Positioning, and really the creators of this entire concept, where I learned a lot of the things that you're about to learn right here. They really are both geniuses, and I can't recommend their book Positioning or their other books enough. So let's talk about positioning, what it is and what it isn't. Positioning is a game that you play in the mind. It's not a game that you play out in reality. You don't position your product by comparing it to other products. You position your product by creating a new mental category that it can be first in. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Well, people use the word positioning, and I'm going to position my product, as if it's something that you actually do with your product or service. You say, well, we're going to position this car as being a luxury compact car, or we're going to position it at the top of the market. And this is fine. I mean, that's one way to use the word, but it's really not the way positioning was intended, and it's not where you get the most power from it. Okay, it's not about looking for a place in the market where you can sneak in. It's about creating a category inside the mind of your prospective customers. Human minds use categories as shortcut decision makers. Human minds use categories as shortcut decision makers. The world is complex and it's full of product options. Most of the product options are not perceived to be significantly different from the other available options. When two options are roughly the same, we consider them to be roughly the same option and we throw one of them away to conserve mental space. Okay? We also use categories in many, many other ways. So if your product is not perceived to be much different from other available products, people just kind of look at your product and they go, oh, that's a Me Too product, and they throw it out. They don't make space for it in their mind. It's no use competing, because if you do, in most cases, you've already lost. So competing is a really rough game in marketing, and it's one that is usually lost when competing with an established competitor. The reason is that the competitor has already gotten into the mind of your customer. Much better to create a new category that you can be first in and then let others compete to get in. Now, human minds, they get distracted very easily. They get confused very easily. They get full very easily, especially in categories that we create. The classic example that Al Ries and Jack Trout use is rental cars. Okay? Turns out that we can keep about 7 or so items in any particular category inside of our mind. So let's take the rental car category. If I said to you, name all the rental car companies you can think of, go. Okay, what are you going to do? You're going to start naming, okay, well, there's Hertz. If you live in America, there's Hertz, there's Avis, there's Budget, there's National, there's Dollar, there's Thrifty. Okay, what is that? That's about 6. Maybe there's 1 or 2 others you could name, and then you kind of run out. Well, there are hundreds of rental car companies. Why do you only remember 6 or 7? It's because that's the way the mind works. It only remembers 6 or 7 things in a category, and then it says, okay, I filled that category up. I don't need to put anything else into it. And you'll find that if you look at any particular category, whether it's the category for canned food or the category for brands of car or the category for places to go on vacation, you'll probably have about 7 that you've put into the category and then you stopped. Because again, that's the way minds work. Now, because most business owners don't understand this psychology, what they do is they try to create a product or service, and they try to get into a category inside the mind where there's already 7 or 8 or 10 or 100 others that have been competing for a long period of time, all to get into that category. And what happens? The mind doesn't let them in. The mind doesn't let them in because it's already full. So, no use competing. If you do compete, you've already lost. What I mean here is that when you try to get into a category that's already established in the mind, you can't get in. You lost the game before you started. And this goes doubly or 10x or 100x when you're dealing with experienced, well-financed competitors that have been at the game for a long time, that are professionals, that know way more than you're ever going to know about that category. So let's talk about how to create a mental category, because that's what you really want to do. Start with an aspect of your customer's need that's critically important to them. Speed, convenience, specific results, a guarantee, maybe some type of functionality, whatever is the key element to your customer. And then base your new mental category on a key need that is currently unmet that your product or service meets. A great example is my business, Double Your Dating, that I mentioned earlier. When I looked at the marketplace, I saw that a lot of people had relationship books and relationship programs, but there was very little on just dating. Now you might say, dating, relationships, what's the difference? Well, there was a specific aspect of my customer's need, and that was, for men, how to get the date in the first place so that they could then go have a relationship that was critically important to them that wasn't being met. So I kind of carved off this little chunk, this little fragment or slice, maybe 10 or 20% of the market, and then I created products and services there. And I created a new category called dating advice for men. And then I built the category. And then I became number one in the category very rapidly. So let's talk a little bit about how to niche your category. Okay, so we want to drill down into a need and find the high emotion value 20% that's going unmet. In my case, I looked into the relationship category and saw that the high emotion value was getting the relationship in the first place. The other end is not losing the relationship once you have it. And so you can do very well if you deal with conflict or saving relationships that are going bad. But in this case, my expertise was in the high emotion value 20% at the beginning, and it was going unmet. No one was talking about it. Next, discover the words, phrases, and specific emotional hot buttons that customers use to describe it. And finally, research to find out the niche within the niche that you can own inside the mind. Okay, that you can own inside the mind. Another valuable lesson that I learned from Al Ries is that categories diverge, just like species diverge. Every business category eventually becomes two categories or more. Computers became laptops and desktops. Cars became compact cars, mid-size cars, and luxury cars. Anticipate this process and split the category yourself to create a category that you can own. Again, similar to what I did with dating advice. Now, here's the interesting thing about categories. The big 800-pound gorilla in a particular business category is almost never the one that builds the next category that they should have built and that they should have won the game at. So, for example, IBM was number one in computers for decades. They completely dominated the market. They were one of the most powerful and successful companies in the world. It makes sense that IBM should have been number one in software, right? I mean, they were creating all kinds of software, But they weren't. Who was number one in software? Microsoft. Why? Because they split off just the part of computers called the software, and then they went to work on it. And of course, there's a whole story about Bill Gates buying DOS from IBM and going on to become a billionaire. Well, Microsoft, which became number one in software, created the richest man in the world very quickly, right? They should have gone on and been number one on the internet, for example, in search engines. But they weren't. Who was? Well, Google won the search engine game. Now, how could this be? Microsoft was a big company that had tens of billions of dollars in the bank and all kinds of experience with software and even with search engines, and yet a little startup of a couple of young guys created something that actually beat Microsoft. It seems impossible. And the two founders of Google have gone on to become two of the richest people in the world. Well, Google should have won the social networking game, right? They had, 100 million people or something using Gmail. They had everybody on the planet using their search engine. They had everybody using their map system and all kinds of other tools that they had. They should have been the one to win social networking, but they didn't. Facebook won the social networking game. Again, a young guy who started it in his dorm room at Harvard and then went on to become, again, one of the richest people in the world. And it's going to go on and on and on and on and on. And the reason why these companies keep losing is because instead of creating a new category and a new business and a new niche and a new name, they try to take their old name and their old business and all the stuff that they used to do and then relabel it as the new category, and people say, nope, that's not the category you're in. You're a hardware company. You're not a software maker. You're a software maker. You're not a search engine maker. You're a search engine maker. You're not a social networking maker. And we go with the new thing. And oftentimes, the newer, younger, more innovative person is just better at understanding the new category. The point is that categories diverge, they emerge, just like species emerge and diverge in ecosystems. And if you understand this and you're willing to create a new category, you can win the game. Name your new category. To get into the mind first, name your new category so that your customers will see you as the inventor of it. Win by creating and promoting the category itself, not just your particular business or product. Now, this is a powerful, advanced strategy. Create a new category and then name it. When I built my dating advice business, it took me a long time to actually name the category because I couldn't figure out what the best name was for it. And then after working on it for a while and listening to what guys were asking for and so forth, I realized that our category was dating advice for men. And then we launched brands that taught dating advice to women, and we became dating advice for men, dating advice for women, and we owned the dating advice category, and we would market ourselves to partners and to the world as number one in dating advice. And this allowed us to do very powerful, it allowed us to do deals with very powerful companies. So to get into the mind first, name your new category so your customers will see you as the inventor of it. So who was first? Who was the first search engine? Who was the first energy drink? Who was the first portable MP3 player? Most people will say Google, Red Bull, and iPod. Not because they were first, but because they were first into the mind. They were first into the category, so people assume that they invented the category. If you ask people who invented cola, most people will just say Coca-Cola. Why? Because that's the one that got into the category in the mind first. As Al Ries and Jack Trout say in their book, The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, it's better to be first than it is to be better. Okay? It's better to be first than it is to be better. In other words, it's better to be first into the mind, first creating a new category in the mind, than it is to have a better product or service. Because being first is seen as more of a distinction. It makes you more memorable than being better. This is an example of human psychology that is very counterintuitive. It's not something that most people would have thought of in a million years. It's only something that professionals, that experts that have experience would figure out. But it's also something that you can use right now to get dramatic advantage if you use it consciously. So some examples of categories that have been created. Health foods. Okay, the Whole Foods market has just dominated this category, created huge markets that are all quote-unquote health food. Online auctions, eBay. Luxury New York condos, Donald Trump. Social networking, Facebook. Online video, YouTube. These particular names, these brands, these companies are so well known, they almost represent the entire category in the mind. In fact, the real masters of this game, their brand name has become the name of the category. And these would be companies like Jell-O or Kleenex, or even now names like Starbucks are starting to mean coffee. So you don't say, let's get a cup of coffee. You say, let's get a Starbucks. And then you go to whatever coffee shop you go to. Very powerful. And here are a few examples that I've created. Again, my first online product was a book of dating advice for men, which I grew into the #1 online dating advice company. My first business training was for businesses that wanted to grow to $10 million per year in revenue, and I quickly dominated that category as well with my altitude training. What's the unmet need that you can create a category for and then own in the mind? So let's do an exercise. Creating a category that you can own. Again, that you can own in the mind. Okay, you should be looking at the exercise that says creating a category that you can own inside the mind. The smartest marketers avoid competing directly with bigger, better financed competitors who are established in a market. Instead, they create a mental category that they can own. Use this exercise to create a category that you can own in the mind of your prospective customer. So let's answer these 3 questions. What is the biggest unmet need that your prospective customer has that you could create a unique mental category around? Next question. What could you name this new category so you're considered the creator of it? And finally, where could you take an existing category and divide it into 2 or more subcategories based on specific needs, then own one of them? Okay, so let's do this exercise, and I will see you in the next session of Marketing Step by Step.